You know what's happening. I know what's happening. Let's get it.
What are some of the major things other than design and morality that the general theory of evolution cannot account for?
I'm gonna have to stop you right there. What are some things besides design and morality? Both of those are perfectly explained by the theory of evolution. Let's do a quick rundown since creationists always seem to forget the things we tell them. Silly creationists. Morality is favored on a population and individual level. Populations where individuals don't go around killing each other are more likely to thrive better. In addition, on an individual level, people who help others tend to receive help in return, and that gives a better chance of survival than if you were alone. The idea of you scratch my back, I scratch yours is not a new concept in scientific theory, so evolution has essentially built morality into the back of our heads. Of course, we have some individuals who may have a lack of understanding when it comes to social concepts and morality, sociopaths for example, but that's actually a medical condition. Meanwhile, in a creationist point of view, if God implanted morality into all of us, why is it that some people don't have it? I guess even God can be biased against his own creations. Second of all, design is perfectly explained by evolution as well. We see in the fossil record that organisms get more and more complex over time. Organisms change their bodily structures to conform with and thrive in their environments. Plus, there are examples of things that are not the best designed, but works, which is exactly what evolution gives us, such as the laryngeal nerve wrapping around the aorta. Anyway, let's continue.
Well, I think that its explanatory mechanisms are heretofore inadequate.
That doesn't answer the question he asked. He's asking what are things we see that evolution cannot explain. He didn't ask you about your thoughts on evolution mechanisms. But now that this has been brought up, I'm gonna have to wholeheartedly disagree, good sir. It certainly is a lot more believable than being poofed into existence by a being we've never seen.
Random mutation and natural selection operate so slowly that it doesn't seem that this much biological complexity could have evolved on Earth in some 4.8 billion years.
First of all, it's 4.5 billion years, unless 300 million years passed since the last time I looked at this number. We all know how fast time flies these days. Second of all, it's incredibly difficult with our puny brains that has only experienced double-digit years to imagine how long 4.5 billion years is. In addition, we have done the calculations with DNA. We have seen the effects in computer simulations. We've done the math on the DNA mutation rate and natural selection over time, and it makes perfect sense. Also, you're probably also thinking of an individual carrying the entire genetics of a population, which most definitely is not the case. Rather, the mutation rate is essentially multiplied by the population number, giving us many more times the rate. I don't know if you actually thought that or not. I just thought you might since, you're a creationist.
Indeed, John Barrow and Frank Tipler in their book, The Anthropic Cosmological Principle, list 10 steps in the course of human evolution, like the origin of photosynthesis, the origin of an inner skeleton, the origin of mitochondria, 10 steps in the course of human evolution, each of which is so improbable that before it would have occurred or evolved, the sun would have ceased to be a main sequence star. It would have gone through the entire course of stellar evolution and incinerated the Earth.
We're getting into a bit of a crazy territory here. First of all, the examples you gave are processes of the origin of life, not evolution by natural selection. Second of all, anyone who categorizes this scientific process into steps clearly has no good scientific understanding of the concept. I've never seen any scientist do anything like this. It's clear it was broken down this way in order to interpret it in his or her own way, which most definitely is not what scientists do. You have to understand it as it is, not break it down to arbitrary steps that you define.
So the explanatory mechanisms of current evolutionary biology seem to be inadequate to account for the biological complexity we see given the available time.
Keyword, seem to be. In other words, seem to be according to a creationist mind.
Bill, let me ask you a question about that too. I know you're investigating this whole empirical atom question right now. We were you actually spoke at an event at ETS, and I happened to be in the room and asked a question regarding theistic evolution. And my question was this, and I'd love to have you answer this as well. My question to the theistic evolutionists was, what evidence do you see for theistic or just for macroevolution of any kind that could not equally be interpreted as evidence for a common designer or common creator?
Yeah.
How would you answer that question?
Ah, theistic evolutionists. It seems that young Earth creationists are targeting old Earth creationists now. To answer the question, there are plenty that cannot be explained by a common designer, or rather, maybe that's not the right approach. See, when you plug in God for everything, you physically cannot really give something that will be accepted by creationists. For example, I could say the DNA of organisms perfectly fit into the tree of life, where we can map out exactly when they diverged, in which case the creationist would come out and say, well, God could have done that. It's the fact that this God can do everything that makes it impossible to disprove. It's the same as saying a pink elephant created the universe and is all-powerful. It's the same as saying a pink elephant created the universe and is all-powerful, and you can't disprove that because the pink elephant is all-powerful. The difference that I would point out is that evolution is a conclusion drawn based on the evidence. All evidence suggests that evolution by natural selection defined the progression of life. Meanwhile, you're trying to fit your God into the evidence, saying, well, God could have done that, or God designed everything, so of course they'd all be similar. See the difference? We start with the evidence and reach a conclusion. You start with a conclusion and try to fit it according to the evidence. We are not the same.
I would say that the best evidence that the theistic evolutionists could offer would be features in the genome or the body plan of an organism which seem to be non-functional and seem to be evolved from a common ancestor in which those genes were functional.
Ah, vestigial organs. Creationists love to counter this point by saying, oh, every vestigial organ actually does have a function, in which case they point to the appendix or something, and then for certain other vestigial organs, they would say something like, we just haven't discovered the function yet. Okay, well, let me point you to our good old friend, the wisdom tooth. There is absolutely no benefit to having it in today's time. Before, our ancestors made use of it because their diets were mostly composed of hunted animals or wild plants. These required more chewing power and more grinding, thus the wisdom teeth were useful. Now, since our diet composes of processed and cooked foods, we don't need them anymore, and now they just serve as a hindrance to our already existing teeth. Wisdom teeth only really do damage, so please tell me what useful purpose the wisdom tooth really serves today. Oh, and when you're done with that, feel free to move on to the external ear where we have underdeveloped muscles, and of course the tailbone.
So let me give one of the examples that Michael Behe gives.
Michael Behe? Isn't he on your side?
Mm-hmm. Olfactory genes that we and chimpanzees both have, a sense of smell, are called pseudogenes. They're broken. They don't work anymore. And yet and chimps have them. Why? Well, the best explanation seems to be that we got them from our last common ancestor who had these, and that therefore we both share these kind of genes, even though they don't do any good at all in our genome.
I didn't expect an example like this to come out of the mouths of creationists, but yes, if we're looking at DNA, then that opens the door to a ton of things. Earlier, I was just talking about vestigial organs, but once we move to DNA, there are a ton more examples we can pull from, because there's a lot of DNA that is junk and have been received from our ancestors, ones that aren't even expressed anymore or have no phenotypical effects. Let's just see what he's going to say regarding the olfactory gene.
To deny this, the creationist would have to say, well, God has chosen to design independently two organisms, chimps and humans, both with these broken parts in them that serve no good. It would be like saying that Ford and GM both designed independently a car with the same broken door handle in it. It doesn't work. So I find that to be the most persuasive argument for thinking that the thesis of common ancestry is at least in part true.
Oh, Okay, well, I guess that's the end of the video.
But then you would need a mechanism to give you common ancestry, and therein lies the problem.
Yeah.
Right. The question would be, is random mutation and natural selection enough to generate these biologically complex organisms from these common ancestors? So there are two separate issues here.
I don't understand. You were presented an argument which you cannot answer, and instead of addressing it, you just hit us with the whataboutism for something else you've mentioned already. Okay, let me just answer the question for you then. You have no good explanation. Junk DNA for a lot of past traits are scattered all throughout our genome. Even if you address one, you can't address them all. And there's no way a, quote, common creator explains any of this. Unless you say something like God created animals one by one and after each one he used the previous one as a prototype to build the next, then once again that'd be a way of twisting your conclusion or original claim in order to fit incoming evidence, instead of scrapping it altogether like you should. That's the beauty of evolution. It is the conclusion from mountains upon mountains of evidence combined together. You not being able to imagine how long 4.5 billion years is not an argument.
Are the explanatory mechanisms posited by evolutionary theory, like random mutation and natural selection, adequate to explain the evolution of biological complexity? And that, I think, is a much more difficult issue.
One thing you have to know is that the theory of evolution, aka natural selection or survival of the fittest, is not the same as evolution itself. Evolution is a grand process in which there are individual mechanisms. One of those mechanisms is natural selection. That's the one that seems to get the most attention because there was a whole history about it. However, that doesn't mean other mechanisms don't exist, such as mutations, genetic drift, gene flow, etc. All of these combined defines evolution. So no, natural selection itself is not sufficient to explain everything, but all the mechanisms of evolution combined are.
Yes, and I remember Stephen Meyer answering the question because he was on the panel too. After one gentleman of the theistic evolution sort gave the sort of answer you gave, Stephen said, well, we've been investigating some of those broken genes and we've discovered we don't think they're really broken. So obviously you'd have to do that on a case-by-case basis. Who knows what the right answer is? But this seems to change every 10 minutes, it seems.
Don't get some stupid creationist to analyze these genes. I doubt any creationist even knows how to analyze genes and know if they're broken or not. That requires some bioinformatics computation, which we all know is well beyond the abilities of a creationist. There are some tools out there for public use, so you don't actually have to start from scratch, but whether or not you believe in the results that are outputted is a different question. If you're doing your own analysis, I would love to see your procedures and how you are doing it, because the method is everything. Maybe later I'll show everyone how this is done using the public tools available. Of course, that'll be another video. Thank you for watching, and thank you to my brilliant supporters, Fireshard, Alan Morton, and Miss Fixit. It's almost time for the holidays, so I hope you all stay safe and have fun. Bye-bye.